Travis Wayne Goodsoul. In the video I did for day 2 of the Feast of Tabernacles, I brought up the dream that I had this morning after sleeping in, after waking up at 1, in which I was looking for a Bible and found one in an abandoned case, which then got stolen at church. And inside the book of the Bible, I saw that somebody had meticulously put a whole bunch of pleasant pictures of women. And so after I posted the video and was resuming my day, and I then got an associative memory kick in the brain. Isaiah. Not just any Isaiah, but a specific Isaiah that was plagiarized in the Book of Mormon, errors and all. On purpose. Over 8K videos, guys. And YouTube is on full attack to shut me up, to keep you from hearing my videos. You are about to get a bombshell yet again. For those of you who are able to break through YouTube's wall. Remember, day 2. This is it, Mormons. And so, the dream is now confirmed as a prophecy dream. That cute little girl who didn't turn out to be Starbucks' child. So, the Isaiah passage is Isaiah chapter 2, right at the beginning. The comparable Book of Mormon version is 2 Nephi chapter 12. This is right after we are told of who our Jewish Christ is for the latter days. And Isaiah has yet to tell us who the Christ is for the Jews of the latter days, which is coming up here in 2 Nephi as well thereafter. But it's Joseph Smith Sr. Again, 8K videos. If you're brand new and you've heard from other sources that it's not, they lied to you. They're not authorities. I am. It was Joseph Smith Sr. who had to rewrite the 116 pages. Junior had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. You've been lied to, regardless of whether you're a Mormon or an anti-Mormon, anti-Christ, apostate, ex-foe, never-mo. You're all wrong. You're not authorities. You don't have education and experience in researching scriptures or church history. You're wrong. The people who told you are wrong. I'm right. When will you learn? Never, I guess. Never. And so, the Book of Mormon at the beginning tells us, 1 Nephi chapter 1, verse 2, that there's the learning of the Egyptians, language of the Egyptians, of the learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians. So Egyptians are involved. Isaiah says the name of the Christ is Emmanuel. That's the Egyptian Christ. The sun god at noonday, Amen El. Emmanuel, sun god, Amen, of the Egyptians. And so when you read through Isaiah, that's not the only Egyptian word. There's others in there. And I'm not going to go over that with you, although it was fun to look over Isaiah chapter 2 in the Paleo-Hebrew script. I'll give you a couple examples just to not do a full-on tease for you. Son of Amos. The Z is the Egyptian throne. The letters are linear, but they come from Egyptian hieroglyphs. The Z comes from the Egyptian throne. Now this is different than crown, Amen. Even though the A is an A and not an O, iron, other stuff. You'd have to know what I'm talking about. But the M and the Z is like the M and the N in Amen. But the N is used as coming from the crown in Egypt. The Z comes from the throne in Egypt. So it's very similar. Amos, Amen. And I'm pretty sure is the A and not the IN. But let me check just to make sure. Because the book of Amos, that's a different ending as well, so pay attention. Bible, Isaiah 2, Westminster Leningrad Codex. Yeah, it's the A and not the circle 0 for the IN. That's the best way to describe it to people who have no clue what I'm talking about. Those who have a little bit of knowledge understand what I'm trying to say, I hope, but regardless. So in verse 2, it shall come to pass in the last days. That's a very curious thing, because in the biblical Hebrew text, it's the R rather than the D. Now it uses Aramaic script, and Emmanuel Tov has done a comprehensive comparison between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the biblical Hebrew text of the Masoretes, because they have proven to be the closest match than any other Bible text. And he has noticed that the majority of errors come from a letter in Aramaic that could be mistaken for another similar letter in Aramaic. The R and the D in Aramaic are very closely the same. It's just the D is pointed at the corner, whereas the R is curved at the corner. That's the only distinguishing feature in Aramaic. That's important to understand. And so it's interesting that it says last days when it has a very close comparison with first. But the T at the end is the X in Paleo-Hebrew. And as I've gone over with you, signs and sign often come from the word in Paleo-Hebrew for the first letter and the last letter of the alphabet. And it's the 3 days of darkness, the solar eclipses over the United States of America. The exact shape of the first letter with the crosses on 8 April 2024. And so to see that at the end, which it should be at the end because of the plural nature here, but when we're dealing with Paleo-Hebrew, you got to pay attention for that. So in that particular case, the God of the cross, that's the Jewish Christ. And so thus the last, I can see is why they would put last as the meaning of the name, or the word. Now understand that there isn't one word translation for Paleo-Hebrew. It's a visionary language. And so what you see here in English is a very incomplete translation, let alone the incorrect translation from the biblical Hebrew. And so there's some other fun stuff as well, because mountain, that's the Egyptian Christ, Horus. Lord's house, the Christ of the temple. So you can see that there's something else going on here, that it's talking about Zion. It's not talking about Utah, the top of the mountains, but that's where he will start his ministry, as I've been going over with you. So the one particular one that had to do with my dream, we're not going to see the parentheses in the Book of Mormon, only in the Bible. Yeah, it starts at verse 10. So now we can go back to the Book of Mormon. Because the Book of Mormon has a controversy that nobody can figure out because they are not experts in the field. If you don't know, just say, you don't know. Don't make things up. But I have to prove the church is true. No, you're Jewish. You're not Christian. You're automatically wrong. O ye wicked ones. Isaiah rules. Enter into the rock. Hide thee in the dust. For the fear of the Lord and the glory of his majesty shall smite thee. Because it's Jesus, he's coming to murder you. This is Christian and Mormon belief. Here we go. I told you, the last days. The day that shall burn as an oven. And it shall come to pass that the lofty looks of men shall be humbled. The haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day, in Zion. Remember the context of all scriptures and the prophecies and the revelations. Don't take this out of context. All Jewish authors, including the Book of Mormon, are in the learning of the Jews. Thus, they have to conform and comply to the law of the Jews, Deuteronomy. The Christ in the future is the man like Moses. And Joseph Smith says he's a Mormon. The Book of Mormon says he will be Mormon. Numerous scriptures on this. All you had to do was study your scriptures. If you put Jesus in his place, that's your fault for falling for the lies of this church. For the day of the Lord of hosts soon cometh upon all nations. And so this is the first coming of the Christ of the Jews. See where the problem is, where you put Jesus in here? Jesus gets a second coming because according to the Jews, he failed as literal history real in the Roman period time. The Jews were utterly destroyed, but not the Romans, not other nations around the world. This makes it very clear that in his day, when he comes, it will be a world destruction event that will be taking place. And only he and those who come with him to Zion will be safe. The rest of the world is at war. He will be in Zion, safe, with the pure in heart of Zion, who believe in him and left in the Exodus Thursday, next week. Unless you choose to be utterly destroyed. Okay? And so then they're talking about the cedars of Lebanon. The day of the Lord shall come upon all the cedars of Lebanon. Not a coincidence that the church paid off Islam to attack the Jews. Just like they paid off Putin to attack Ukraine. Because when you turn this into literal history, it's now about the second coming of Jesus, but because it's not going to be Jesus doing it, because Jesus doesn't exist, created by Constantine, remember? It's the church that has to do it, and they have to pay hitmen to do it. And so they paid the Judas price to Putin to cause the war in Ukraine, to fulfill Bruce R. McConkie's chapter heading prophecy of Ezekiel 38. And then paid off Islam to self-fulfill their self-fulfilling interpretation of this, the coming of Jesus, upon the cedars of Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon. You know, if you hadn't heard in the news, the leader of Hamas is dead. And so now all of the anti-Semites, anti-Hamidos, Egyptians, Jews, are now complaining that Israel is not giving enough aid to their enemies and not stopping the war against Israel. Israel's not stopping the war against Israel, huh? So yeah, you know, I saw the same argument in Battlestar Galactica. Somebody is plagiarizing Battlestar Galactica. Stop it. One of the Cylons is talking to Baltar, and Baltar says, just leave. You know, they've all left. He's alone on New Caprica with the Cylons, and he says, just leave. Find a new place to live, and leave us alone. And so the Cylon then tries the fallacy argument of, and so we go off and live, and then you and the rest of the humans tell your children, and they tell their children, and they tell their children of how we're the enemy, and that eventually a descendant of yours will gather an army to come seek us out to destroy us. Well, yeah, because you're the enemy. The Cylon was in denial of October 7th. I mean, the original war to exterminate the human race. And so, yes, the humans are fighting the Cylons for their very existence and survival. Just like Israel is. There are 2 billion Islamists worldwide. Islam turned the whole world against Israel. The UN has been aiding and giving comfort in the war against Israel. Sick and wrong. But nonetheless, I found that very coincidental. And shame on the church leaders who watched the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. Especially Caprica. Especially the pilot episode. The uncensored. Oh no, we can assure you, Travis, we watched the censored version. Whatever. You and your pleasant pictures. Whatever. You're not fooling me. So that's what we're getting to. Because of the dream. That all of this has to do with it. And so, so the cedars of Lebanon are high and lifted up, and upon all the high mountains, upon all the hills, upon all the nations which are lifted up, and upon every people. Destruction is coming because they have exalted themselves, when only the Christ is to be exalted as King of Kings, Lord of Lords in Zion, at peace, where everybody else are bullies and they're all fighting to the death to prove who's the best bully. You know, Trump was crowned King of Roasting of Harris yesterday. Of course he was. He can murder people and be awarded for it. He can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. God. Government has fallen. And so, in 2 Nephi 12, verse 16, here's the controversy. And upon all the ships of the sea, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, which that's a fun word in Paleo-Hebrew. That's the sun god at noonday, with a different spelling of it. Samson, Tarshish, same word, different spelling. And upon all pleasant pictures. That needs to be corrected to Egyptian. Literally, Egyptian. Pleasant is not pleasant. It's pictures of Egypt. It is phonetically the same as Egypt. Hamed, Hamet, Kemet. Egypt. Phonetically the same. Just like Yehuda, Judah, as you know it, is phonetically the same as Utah. Judah, Utah. Phonetically the same. The Lion constellation of Battlestar Galactica with the blinking eye of red and blue to lead them to Earth? Yeah. The Lion constellation of Leo. The symbol of the Jews, which is the symbol of the Egyptians, specifically the 18th dynasty, because of a certain pharaoh who had dreams at the lion statue. It was David Moses IV, I believe. After David Moses III, who was involved in Armageddon, and then took a vacation on the mountaintop of Salem, after which Salem built a temple, built a palace, built a throne for the baby born of David Moses III and the daughter of the high priest of the Salem town hamlet, to be named the king of Salem. Salem, peace, king, and Solomon. Ta-da! But it's prophecy in the Bible. I gave you a little history of the backstory of the prophecy. Thus, the Christ is Messiah ben David, son of David. And thus Solomon, the first king of the hamlet of Salem, becoming the kingdom of Salem. Solomon. It's not just Solomon for the guy, it's also Solomon for the kingdom. Kingdom of Salem with the king of Salem. Obviously, that is not his name. That's a title. So the controversy is that the biblical Hebrew text does not have upon all the ships of the sea. It only has, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all Egyptian pitchers. Now, yes, Egyptian pitchers has some very pleasant pictures of women. Often they are portrayed topless because they're women. Women are identified with breasts. They're also identified with no beard, but the breasts help confirm that they're females and not males. Because you can have young boys that don't have the beard, and so as long as they're flat, then you can go, oh, okay, so it's a boy. And then if there's text, it'll explain that it's a boy. Not always. But the hieroglyphs need to be translated too. Egyptologists don't do this. Oops. They're not as smart as they claim they are. They're exalting themselves. Okay? So this is pretty much it. The hiding in the rocks and all that stuff, this is the latter days with the destruction that comes. There's other passages that speak of this same similar thing. What's interesting is that the Book of Mormon has the footnote in both of these passages, or the footnotes are in both passages. The one here in the Book of Mormon is 16a. The Greek Septuagint has ships of the sea. The Hebrew has ships of Tarshish. The Book of Mormon has both, showing that the brass plates are true. Had lost neither phrase. No! No! No. No, 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 no. Because again, it's not translated correctly, first and foremost. Secondly, Joseph Smith Sr. put in both. He knows the Septuagint. He's got it. He's also got a biblical Hebrew text with the King James Version. He knows. He put it in. He did it on purpose, so that you would know that it's the whole world and not just the Mediterranean Sea. Thinking that it's going to be in Israel. The destruction of Lebanon. Jesus Christ murdering Islam to save the surviving Jews and convert them to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and establish the BYU Jerusalem Center as the Jerusalem Temple until the Jerusalem Temple can be rebuilt off the ruins of the Dome of the Rock. That's the church's plan. They're going to let the Jews worry about that. They want nothing to do with the Jews. Nelson only wants to focus on Utah and destroying America to make it the kingdom. It's a big difference. Joseph Smith never wanted to overthrow the government. He wanted a city for Mormons to be safe in the latter days from the destruction of humanity in the world, and thus why it's necessary for Zion to be the new center for the creation of mankind. And that's why the Danites twisted Joseph up to purposely claim with forged documents that we got section 116 from. Joseph Smith didn't write this. This was all a Danite thing. Danites were the ones that claimed that Adam-on-Diamond was eastward of Eden, and that's where mankind began. And so talking about Adam-on-Diamond's priesthood meeting, misinterpreting on purpose Daniel's passage, it's their indicator in code that they're going to overthrow the government of America and establish their kingdom. But the church also wants to make sure that they're able to resume polygamy again, that they accused Joseph Smith of, and all of its abominations. Stealing men's wives who are unworthy. Because you're just an elder, you're not a priesthood leader. Only priesthood leaders will be exalted in the highest degree of the celestial kingdom. So, since you're unworthy, you have to be made a slave, and your wife has to be taken from you, and she needs to be put to work as a breeder. None of this fooling around with only having 1 or 2 kids. You need to pop them out every year, women. So that's what you have to look forward to if the church wins and the Jewish God fails. All of prophecies come to naught. Isn't that fun? Church is true, huh? And so, yeah, that's a scary situation. And I'm really hoping for more righteous, pure men. Because if the church loses and they fall according to prophecy, and it's a massive amount of women that go to Zion, dear God, help those few men. And I'm afraid and scared it's going to be me as one of them. And I've been concerned about that ever since I did the video on that this morning. I just want one to succeed. Just one. And I can spend my time with her. We can get to know each other, enjoy each other's company, and be happy ever after. And instead, no. It's not going to happen. Pizza? What's it doing up there? And if, even if it's 10, and I was in New York mission, and I finished up in the Bronx, and McFarland and I were sent in to finish up our missions to try to get the membership records fixed and established. It was just total chaos. A couple missionaries had been going there for decades and just botching it up and screwing it up, and they couldn't do their job. They failed. It was an ugly mess. And so Colford sent us in to fix it, and we did within a month before McFarland went home at the end of that month. And then I finished off with Baxter, my MTC companion, for our final month. We both went home together. We both died together. Which, yeah, that would be awesome to have a wife who we die together. And be the ultimate Just lie in bed cuddling, and then we die together. Because, yeah, it's sad when your partner dies and you're all alone after being with them for all those decades. I can only imagine it, but I mean, I can relate because of the 2 failed marriages, being away from them and single, having the memory of the relationship and realizing it's not happening. And so it's as if they died. And so, yeah, to have multiple women that I'm not able to spend my whole day with, I'm not that kind of a guy. And it's going to be very frustrating for me, as I want to get to know just one woman, but then having to get to know up to 10 women, 100 women, oh, now I'm quivering. But the Bronx branch, when we figured out who is actually in the ward and got the membership records fixed, they had enough for 2 relief societies. And we didn't have enough for 1 elders quorum. That's why it got split into 2 branches after I left, and then became the 2 missions, north and south. I'm responsible for that division. And so, yeah, that situation, dear God. And there's no number requirement for relief society. And so for them to have to divide it into 2 relief societies, I'm already aware of such a thing with the older singles ward on Fort Union Boulevard behind the fire station, where both the Elders Quorum and the Relief Society were split into 2. But if there were not enough for 1 Elders Quorum and 2 full amounts of relief societies, just a scary thought. As much as women think that men would be excited and thrilled, oh my God, you have never seen Big Love, have you? He only had 3 to deal with and tried to get a 4th involved. But hopefully Zion will eliminate most of the problems because of no economy in Zion. That's the big problem with 1 woman in a relationship. But it's just going to be sad and tragic, whatever happens. And so as much as I'm trying to ignore and live in denial of reality, but still in fantasy land about Zion happening next week, as I said, I've got all the Exodus planned out. It just has to happen so I can implement it. I'm scared to death of the potential. 2 failed marriages, and now I'd have to deal with 100 women. Oh, hell no. And the women, seriously? Oh my God. Just the insecurity and the uneasiness and all of that feelings and emotions that would be played out to the extreme, as there would be the instant temptation for insecurity. If you go without food for a certain time, you have food insecurity. So when you are presented with food, you rush to overindulge because of the insecurity that you've had by being without. And so thus, sex, oh dear God. yeah, I'm not that kind of a guy. I saw my peers bragging and boasting and doing it, and I wanted nothing to do with those guys. But they were okay with doing a different woman and marking them on their bedpost. I couldn't do that. I wanted Laura Baker to grow up with me, and then we'd fall in love and get married, and life would be great, and we'd have, how many ever kids, and they'd be all grown up and married off, and we'd still be living together and having a happy marriage, and it didn't work out that way. We moved to Corona. I don't know what happened to her, but I found out through the second wife, who's her cousin, that she went on and I guess married some other guy, and then she was getting a master's degree last I heard. So good for her. Hope she's happy, hope she's still alive, and hope she makes it to Zion with her family. But that fantasy did not occur as I witnessed in real time of how it did not happen for me that way. Laura Baker was the only girl that I grew up with who was Mormon. And she liked Kevin. And she purposely did poorly in school to be put in the remedial class because that's where Kevin was. See, as a smart kid as I was not that smart when it comes to women. And so, no, I would have never thought, hey, if I want to be with Laura, I should bomb all my tests to be put in the remedial class with her. And then watch her as she laughs and talks it up with Kevin. And just like at recess, they're playing tag, boys and girls, and I'm clueless that when you get caught, you want to get caught because that's when the girl kisses you. And I wasn't smart enough to figure that out. Nobody taught me. They did not explain the rules properly. So anyway, there you have it. And so, yeah, the daughters of Zion, which is soon thereafter in Isaiah. Chapter 3, verse 16. Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk, with stretched forth and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, making a tinkling with their feet. Oh, they're so cute. And Christians, especially Mormons, I see interpreting this as materialistic, as the material goods are the evil. And that's how you know they're evil. Oh my God, no. Can you say idol worship of Lucifer? No. The daughters of Zion are haughty and proud. These kinds of improper, sinful thinking processes. They're not thinking about the Lord. They're not thinking about loving other people. They're mean girls. And so, as mean girls, thus, why the ornamentation on the outside? They're exalting themselves. They're drawing attention to themselves, revealing their inner self of the need for attention, the need for praise, the need for worship, rather than being humble, sweet, cute girls. And those were the ones that I always was attracted to, whereas the other guys were more interested in the girls who fit the particular shape of whatever Playboy model came out in their older brother's magazine subscription that he bought, I guess, or dad's. I knew nothing of that. I'm in a Mormon family. Sex is evil. Don't even think about sex, Travis. Until the homophobic 80s came around and my uncle decided to abandon his family because he was sure he was gay, because he wanted to stay home with grandma doing house chores like a woman rather than doing manly stuff on the farm with his older brother and dad. And so he abandoned his wife and 3 Barbie doll daughters to be gay. So my parents then assumed, well, Travis isn't dating anybody, he must be gay. Mom, why didn't you stick up for me? She just led me as a lamb to the slaughter, and because she forgets. You know, when Elvis turned wicked by doing drugs, Elvis died in her mind before he actually died of an overdose. And so, like me, when I hit puberty, I died in my mom's eyes. I was gone. Her firstborn son is dead. And she forgot. And she was the one who set me up for it. And so because of Beth in kindergarten, I don't want to get into that because I'll end up bawling. My mom set us at the kitchen table when she would get which would be around this time of the year, get the new Sears catalog. And she'd give us white paper and glue until Scotch tape was invented. And we would do collages, tear out pieces of the old Sears catalog and do collages. Now, she expected us to use furniture, toys. So when I'm going through it, I'm saying, women, underwear. Isn't this evil? I'm curious. And so I became interested in women's fashion because of this, because of the church's abuse sexually on us. And so my mom likewise was turned into a weapon of the church to sexually abuse us as kids. And so I wanted to become a woman's fashion designer because of this. I was fascinated with women's fashion. When my sisters got the fashion plates, I was the one playing with them every day. I would go knock on their door, and they'd peek out. What? Can I play with the fashion plates? Yeah, but right here. When you're done, knock. And so right there at their door, on the floor, I was playing the fashion plates. It was my toy. But they had possession of it, and they never played it. So, yeah, and so my mom never knew. I always kept it a secret. And so whenever she would throw out the Sears catalog in the future, after we had finished the collages, I would go through the trash and pull them out and take out the women's fashion pictures. And then JCPenney came along with their catalogs. and they were better quality pictures. And so, knowing that my mom thinks that women are evil, I then had to hide them in my bedroom. And my mom, one day, I guess, found out that somebody was going through the old catalogs and ripping out the women's fashion. And so she came right into my bedroom and went searching through my closet drawer and found them. And she saw them, and then again she had a memory lapse, and I was dead to her. She walked out. And so when they thought I was gay, my mom didn't know, couldn't remember that I like women. The pleasant pictures. All has to play a part in it. So yeah, that's why I'm the biggest defender of women by this church's extremist sex abuse of women. Saying that women are porn, women are evil, women's bodies need to be covered up and hidden from the world. I am the foremost, the only anthropologist of the ancient Middle East. I see porn all the time, every day. Because it was in the language of the Egyptians to teach sex ed, not just in the language, but visually. And so you go to the facsimiles, especially facsimile number 2, count the number of peni, people. You know, the church wants nothing to do with translation. They want nothing to do with the Book of Abraham. They want to get rid of it. They think it's porn. They do not acknowledge it as scripture. Just like Spencer W. Kimball said that the Song of Solomon is porn. It is not scripture. It is not inspired about Jesus. And so the story is that he stapled it shut. Seriously? And so women are abused by this church. Not just by the world and the commercials telling them to cover up and hide with this new makeup product that looks natural. Or cover up and hide with this new stuff, this new costume. And it's just so sad. The 80s just totally attacked women with the blonde versus brunettes and the blondes being dumb and all the blonde jokes, and women who were white were blamed for being white and abused and to, you know, go tan and then become blackface. God, just setting them up for failure, setting them up for abuse, and then women attacking Barbie as an unrealistic image of women. It's a doll! But yeah, this is psychology that was doing all this. And so little girls who are being told by mommy that they can't have Barbie because Barbie is an unrealistic expectation of a woman's body, little girls are just going, oh, okay. Here's a Betty Crocker baking set. Learn how to be pregnant barefoot and in the kitchen. Like a good trad wife daughter. And that all leads to a mental break for women as they fall into depression. And the church has this whole thing about perfection. And even though they came out with strive to be perfect, it still was too late. women here, they've got to be perfect. And they have misunderstood what it means to be perfect. It's going through your temple washing and anointings. You're now perfect. Good job. Good for you. Nope, not in this church. And so women just go down into the depths of despair, and then psychologists are right there to snatch them up, to protect the church from blame. And then they drug you, and now we're finding out that those drugs by the big pharma company that was making multi-billions of dollars off of this, thanks to psychologists working together to make a heavy profit off of humans, are now shortening the lifespan of women. Any drug from a pharmaceutical company, rather than a natural remedy, will kill you, shorten your lifespan, because it's all chemical based. They have side effects that require you to take more drugs, and those have side effects requiring more and more. So by the time you're an elderly person, you've got a whole diet plan of a plate full of drugs for every meal, and then a smaller one in between. It's just sad that we allowed this to happen in our nation. None of it needed to happen. And then now we've got an even worse situation when women are now being murdered and threatened with arrest for being raped, for having a miscarriage, for using contraception, and oops, there was a hole in it. What's happening is it's just abominable. The Bible in Genesis, which we know was written during the Roman period time because it has Roman practices in it. Sodom. That's your big clue. It's an anachronism. Because male sacral prostitution was not created until the Romans. Thus, for the story of Sodom means that it had to have been written by somebody during the Roman period time. The Jewish author was during the Roman period time. And so whether the Exodus story was written after Genesis or before Genesis, it doesn't really matter. Since the author of Genesis is assuming the knowledge of a Joseph as the forerunner to Moses, the Genesis author could have just been taking it off of Exodus and saying, oh, yeah, okay, so we've got the forerunner Christ as Joseph. I'm going to do my story on the man like Moses, but set it up as the pre-show for the coming of Joseph, who will be a man like Moses, but is also the forerunner for Moses. So I will now explain the book of Exodus with Joseph of Egypt. Either way works. And so for scholars to just assume that Constantine's first creed is correct, it's all literal history, and thus put it in a chronological order, is wrong. It's not how you date a document, guys. And so the story of Tamar, that not even the Jews want to know about, that alone could be dated to a Greek period of time, where they began female sacral prostitution. But with the Sodom story, it's clear that it's Roman period. You go to the earliest identifiable time period of when certain activities, events, persons existed, so that you can date it accurately after you've already established that it is a legitimate document and not a forged document. But part of identifying a forgery is doing this linguistic testing on the document itself. So I've been able to identify forged documents that people were putting forth as a newly discovered document simply because I know how to check. Apparently other people don't, because they're using Constantine's Creed as their basis for reality. But you can't do that. You're biasing your research. So anyway, all that extra stuff was unnecessary. Just my dream was a prophecy dream about the coming day that shall burn as an oven. And a cute little girl who's a daughter of Zion. You know,